The Wizard of Oz wasn't as innocent as we thought. The Wizard of Oz is one of the most beloved movies of all time. But what many people don't know is that the movie was plagued with problems during its production, from Judy Garland's near-death experience to the devastating tornado that destroyed the set. Here are 25 weird facts about the making of The Wizard of Oz. Nearly died. Judy Garland nearly died while filming The Wizard of Oz. She was so malnourished that she contracted hepatitis and was close to death by the time filming wrapped. A tornado. A tornado destroyed the set during filming, and it took a year to rebuild it. The tornado also caused several injuries, and several of the Munchkins were actually killed. Some scenes were too racy. The Lollipop Guild had to be edited out of some scenes because they were too racy. In one scene, they were actually caught smoking cigarettes. In another scene, they were caught drinking alcohol. Suffered burns. Margaret Hamilton, the Wicked Witch, suffered burns when her cape caught on fire. The accident happened during a scene where the Wicked Witch is being burned alive and Hamilton was badly burned. She required several skin grafts to repair the damage. 6 hours to apply. It took over 6 hours to apply all the makeup for the Wicked Witch. The makeup was so heavy and cumbersome that it took a long time to apply. In fact, the makeup team had to take a break every few hours so that Hamilton could eat and drink. Tortuous Costumes. Making a movie is no easy task. In addition to the long hours and difficult work, the cast and crew often have to deal with difficult costumes. The Wizard of Oz was no exception. The costumes were often torturous, and the actors had to suffer through them for hours on end. The Cowardly Lion's costume was so heavy that it often caused him to fall over. The suit was made out of real lion fur, and it was so heavy that the actor who played the lion, Burt Lahr, often fell down while wearing it. The Tin Man suit was made of actual tin, and it was so heavy that the actor who played him, Jack Haley, had to be hoisted into it using a crane. The Scarecrow's face was originally made out of paper mache, but it began to fall apart after a few days of filming, so they had to replace it with a more durable material. And Judy Garland had to have her shoes specially made because she was too short. Judy Garland was medicated. One such circumstance was Garland's constant need for medication. She was often given pills to help her get through long days of filming, and she was often quite drugged up while on the set. This caused her to sometimes act out of character, and it made the production process more difficult than it needed to be. Judy Garland got paid less. Despite her near-death experience and the many problems that plagued the production, Judy Garland was paid less than most of the other actors. She was paid $500 per week, while most of the other actors were paid $2,000 per week. The horses were covered in gelatin. One of the most bizarre things about the making of The Wizard of Oz was the fact that the horses were covered in gelatin. This was done in order to make them look shiny and healthy, but it often caused them to break out in hives. Toxic snow. The toxic snow in The Wizard of Oz was made out of gelatin as well. However, this gelatin was not meant for animals, it was meant for humans. It was a toxic substance that could cause skin irritation and other health problems. 5 different directors. The 5 different directors who worked on The Wizard of Oz had very different visions for the film. One wanted it to be a dark and brooding movie, while another wanted it to be a light-hearted children's film. This caused a lot of conflict and tension on the set, and it often resulted in long hours and difficult work. Theater flop. Despite being one of the most popular films of all time, The Wizard of Oz was not a financial success when it was first released. It only made back its production cost after being re-released a few years later. Kindergarten Witch. The Kindergarten Witch was a character who was cut from the final version of The Wizard of Oz. She was supposed to be a friend of the Wicked Witch, but she was cut because her scenes were considered too dark and scary for children. Shirley Temple was the original Dorothy. Shirley Temple was originally cast as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. However, she was eventually replaced by Judy Garland because her parents felt that she was too young for the role. Sneaky Frank Morgan. One of the most interesting things about The Wizard of Oz was the fact that Frank Morgan, who played the wizard, was also the voice of the Wicked Witch. He did this by wearing a green makeup and wig, which allowed him to play both roles without anyone knowing. Inappropriate behavior on set. Even though The Wizard of Oz was a massive undertaking, it wasn't without its problems. One of the biggest issues was the fact that many of the actors behaved inappropriately on set. Judy Garland was often drunk and disorderly, and she was often late or absent from filming. The Munchkins were known for their wild parties, and they were often caught drinking and doing drugs on set. Bert Lahr was often drunk and high during filming, and he was often disruptive and uncooperative. All of this inappropriate behavior created a lot of tension and drama on the set, and it often made the production process more difficult than it needed to be. Temperature on set. One of the most notorious aspects of The Wizard of Oz was the fact that it was plagued by extreme temperatures on set. Because the movie was filmed in the middle of summer, the actors were often subjected to unbearable heat, and many of them ended up getting sick as a result. In order to combat the heat, the producers tried to keep the set as cool as possible. They did this by installing giant fans and spraying the actors with cold water whenever they needed to film a scene. Despite these efforts, the extreme temperatures still took their toll on the cast and crew, and many of them ended up getting sick as a result. Scars on actors. In addition to the many behavioral issues on set, The Wizard of Oz was also known for the number of scars that actors ended up with. Because of the extreme temperatures and the amount of work that they had to do, the cast and crew were often subjected to injuries and burns. Many of the actors ended up with scars as a result of filming, and some of them even required surgery in order to fix the damage that was done. This was particularly true for Judy Garland, who suffered from numerous burns and blisters during filming. More than 3,000 costumes were made for the movie. The Wizard of Oz was a massive undertaking with more than 3,000 costumes made for it. This was a huge number, especially considering that most of the costumes were only worn once. The date on the Wicked Witch's gravestone. One of the most mysterious things about The Wizard of Oz is the date on the Wicked Witch's gravestone. This date is never mentioned in the film, and it's not clear what it means or why it's significant. Some believe it's a reference to a specific event in history, while others believe that it's just a random number. What do you think it means? The truth about lunch. In the movie The Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West famously says, "I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too." But what you may not know is that this famous line was actually inspired by something that happened on set. One day, the Wicked Witch of the West caught Judy Garland eating her lunch. When she asked Judy what she was doing, Judy replied, "I'm getting you, my pretty, and your little dog, too." The Wicked Witch was so amused by this response that she decided to use it in the movie. The sequel. The Wizard of Oz was a massive success, and it's been loved by audiences around the world for decades. But what you may not know is that there's a sequel to The Wizard of Oz. This sequel, which is called The Return to the Wizard of Oz, follows Dorothy as she returns to Oz and tries to save it from the Wicked Witch of the West. The film was released in 1984, and although it's not as successful as the original, it's still fun to watch for fans of the franchise. The Missing Slippers. One of the most famous scenes in The Wizard of Oz is when Dorothy and her friends are attacked by the Wicked Witch of the West, and Dorothy famously says, "What have you done with my slippers?" The scene is iconic, and it's been parodied and referenced countless times over the years. But what you may not know is that the slippers were not originally meant to be in the movie. They were only added at the last minute when the producers realized that they needed something for Dorothy to lose in order to create a sense of tension. The last-minute addition ended up being one of the most iconic scenes in the movie, and it's become an iconic symbol of The Wizard of Oz.